We have to understand as men and women of God, this would have never happened if he would have never renewed his mind. But when you begin to look at this text, you'll find a fellow very similar to Malcolm. You'll find a man by the name of Apostle Paul, who too had to go through a transformation, who too had to have his mind renewed. Just like Malcolm, he was one of the worst sinners. But once he had an experience on Damascus roads, he became one of the best Christians. And when you begin to look at this text, you'll find the Apostle Paul, Pastor Cage, he's over in Corinth. And he couldn't travel at this particular time because it was the winter months. And during the winter months, the Mediterranean Sea was too rough to travel. So since Paul had a little time on his hands, he decided to write this letter that we're reading today. And the reason why he wrote this letter is because he sent it to the Romans. And he wanted to introduce himself to the Romans. But he also wanted to tell them about his theology. And when you begin to look at the Rome was a very splendid city. In today's time, Rome would be a Las Vegas. It would be a New York City. It was very splendid. But Rome was also a very corrupt city. And when you begin to look at Rome, it was the economic and political capital of the world. So truly all roads led to Rome. So the Apostle Paul knew, I have to get to Rome. And when you begin to look at Rome, it was filled with millions and millions of people. But there was one particular problem. Many of them were slaves. So the Apostle Paul knew that he had a tough task on his hand. Because anytime you find people that have been in bondage, anytime you find people who have a slave mentality, they have to be shaken and they have to be broken. But the Apostle Paul knew with the help of the Lord that he could help renew their mind. He knew he could help transform them. He knew he could help take them to higher heights and deeper depths, as long as they lined up with what he had given to them. And I believe when you begin to look at the Apostle Paul, I believe there's three things that he was trying to tell the Romans when they got over there. And I believe even as we read these texts today, I believe the Apostle Paul is trying to tell you and I something. And I believe he said the first way that you need to renew your mind is that you have to understand that you have to go through a renovation. And when you go through a renovation, you're simply repairing something. You're fixing something up. And when you begin to look at renewing your mind, it's almost like renovating a house. And you have to understand when you renovate a house, it's going to cost you some money. But when you renovate your mind, it's going to cost you something too. When you renovate your mind, it might cost you some friends. When you renovate your mind, it might cost you some family members. When you renovate your mind, it might cost you your husband. When you renovate your mind, it might cost you your wife. When you renovate your mind, it's going to cost you something. But the question I have to ask you today, are you willing to pay the price? Why don't you help me today and look at your neighbor and tell them it's going to cost you something. Oh, come on, look at your other neighbor and tell them to renew your mind. But notice what happens, Reverend Riddick, in a renovation, just like renovating a house. After the dust settles and after everything clears, there's a few things that happens. Number one, you're going to look better. Number two, you're going to feel better. But number three, your property value has just increased. And all I'm trying to tell you today that the Apostle Paul is trying to tell you and I, he's just trying to tell us that God is trying to get us to understand our value. God is trying to get you to understand your worth. God is trying to say that we have lived below our means. I'm here to tell somebody here today that I'm going to get me some new estimates because I know that my value has just increased. Well, why has it increased, preacher? Because I have renewed my mind. I've caused myself to be revigorated. I've caused myself to be reformed. I've caused myself to be changed. I'm under construction because I'm renewing my mind. But notice what happens after the renovation, just like renovating a house. Notice not only does your property value go up, but everybody's property value in the neighborhood goes up. And all I'm trying to tell you and I today is that once we renew our mind, it's not only going to benefit me, it's going to benefit my kids. It's not only going to benefit my kids, it's going to benefit my grandkids. It's not only going to benefit me, but it's going to benefit my mama. It's not only going to benefit me, it's going to benefit my daddy. It's not only going to benefit me, but it's going to benefit my wife. It's going to benefit you when you renew your mind. But notice what happens after the renovation, after you allow yourself to go through a mental renovation.
I see.
Then you'll be prepared for God's revelation. You have to understand when you're talking about God's revelation, you're talking about Him showing you some stuff. You're talking about Him giving you some information. And the Bible says in Psalms 91:1, it says, "He that dwells in the secret place shall abound under the shadow of the Almighty." And all that's saying is the more time that you spend with God, the more time God is going to spend with you. The more time you decide to love on God, the more time that He's going to love on you. But can I tell you, I don't believe that God is talking to everybody. Or what are you talking about, preacher? I don't believe He's talking to everybody. And the reason being because you have a lot of people that might be in mess. And when you find people in a whole lot of mess, when you find people that's causing a whole lot of confusion, you have to understand that God is not a part of that. Because the Bible says He's not the author of confusion, but He is the author of peace. So I'm talking to some folks here today that wants God's revelation, who wants God to show you some things that you have never seen before, who wants God to let you feel some things that you've never felt before. I'm thinking about Pastor Cage. Oftentimes, he says certain things. And we've been here for about 2.5 years. And there's so many things that he has said that have come to pass. And oftentimes Pastor Cage said, "I'm not a prophet." But I believe that he has a prophetic word in his mouth. And the only way you're able to get a prophetic word is spending time with God. And I want to tell you and me, if we spend the right time with God, we too can speak a prophetic word in our mouth. We too can have something to say. We too can speak over our life. We too can go tell somebody else that God is about ready to move on your behalf, because there's certain things that God will share with you that He won't share with others. So come on and give God some praise. And MasterCard has a saying that says membership has its privileges.